Most people think January is a dead month in the garden. Nothing growing, nothing to do. Just cold soil and seed catalogs. But that belief has quietly cost families thousands of dollars in food and robbed them of real food security. Because while most gardens are asleep, the smartest survival gardens begin right now. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments where in the world you're washing from and what single food you buy the most at the grocery store. Just one crop. I want you thinking about that as we go. By the end of this video, you'll know which crops must be started in January if you want your garden to actually feed. You not just look pretty in spring. You'll see how ordinary people quietly grow food for months before anyone else harvests a single tomato. And near the end, I'll reveal one plant that can feed you year after year with almost no effort, but only if you start thinking about it now. This isn't about trendy gardening. This is about the difference between abundance and scrambling. Between opening your pantry calmly or standing in a store wondering why basic food costs so much. January is where food security really begins. Most people wait for spring, and by the time spring arrives, they've already lost weeks they can never get back. Time is the one thing plants don't forgive you for wasting. Tonight, I want you to start seeing January differently. Not as winter, but as the foundation of your entire food year. Stay with me, because what we're about to cover could quietly change how you eat for the next 12 months, and how resilient your household really is. Food prices rise fast, but they almost never fall. Supply chains look stable until suddenly they aren't. And the people who suffer most aren't the ones who didn't work hard. They're the ones who depended completely on systems they don't control. Our grandparents understood this. During wartime and hard years, they didn't wait for perfect weather or perfect timing. They planted early. They planted slow crops. And they planted foods that stored well, lasted long, and showed up in almost every meal. That wisdom didn't vanish because it stopped working. It vanished because convenience replaced necessity. Today, many gardeners grow for weekends, not survival. Raised beds look beautiful, but they don't always answer the hard question: what do I eat when stores are expensive, empty, or unreliable? January planting answers that question. When you start certain crops now indoors, in cold frames, or even outside in mild climates, you stretch the growing season in a way spring planting never can. You harvest earlier, you harvest longer, and you grow crops that actually carry you through the year, not just a few summer weeks. I once met an older gardener who barely bent his knees anymore. His garden wasn't big, but every January, he quietly started the same crops. By summer, his neighbors were buying vegetables. He was storing them. He told me something I never forgot. He said, "A garden doesn't fail in July. It fails in January when you decide to wait." In a moment, I'll show you why crops planted now don't just give you food sooner, they give you more food, better storage, and far less stress later. And later in this series, we'll talk about one crop that doesn't just feed you this year, but comes back again and again with almost no work. If your goal is a garden that feeds you when your back is tired, when money is tight, and when life gets unpredictable, January is not optional. It's essential. Let's start with the quiet heroes of food security. The crops that don't get likes on social media, but show up in your kitchen almost every single day. Onions are one of those crops. Almost every cooked meal begins with them, yet most people treat onions as an afterthought. They grab cheap sets in spring and accept whatever harvest they get. But when onions are started from seed in January, something powerful happens. They grow slowly, steadily, and build larger bulbs with better storage life. That means onions that last through winter instead of sprouting or rotting by early fall. You don't need fancy equipment. A sunny window and basic seed trays are enough. The key is patience. Onions take time, and January gives them exactly what they need. When planted early, a single tray of seedlings can turn into a year's supply of one of the most important foods in your pantry. Closely related and even more overlooked are leeks. Leeks are one of the greatest winter survival vegetables ever grown. Unlike onions, you don't need to harvest and store them all at once. They stand in the garden through frost and snow, waiting patiently until you need them. In cold months, when fresh vegetables are rare or expensive, leeks are still there. Started in January, leeks grow thick, long, and resilient. They reward slow gardeners, and they're gentle on the body too. You harvest them one at a time when you want, without bending over repeatedly or hauling heavy loads. These two crops alone, onions and leeks, form a foundation. They stretch meals, they add calories, flavor, and satisfaction, and they store when many modern vegetables simply don't. Now let's talk about something most people get wrong: tomatoes. Everyone loves tomatoes, but most gardeners plant them too late. They wait for spring warmth, forgetting that tomatoes need a long indoor head start. When tomatoes are started in late January, they have time to build strong roots and sturdy stems before ever touching outdoor soil. That head start changes everything. Earlier fruit, longer harvest, less disease pressure. Instead of waiting until late summer, like everyone else, you're harvesting when tomatoes still feel special. For seniors or anyone with limited energy, this matters. A strong tomato plant started early produces more with less stress later, fewer replacements, fewer failures. And here's a truth most people never say out loud: a garden that feeds you isn't about how many plants you grow. It's about how long they produce. January planting gives you time. And time is food. Stay with me, because next we're moving into crops that fill the hungry gap, that empty stretch between early greens and summer abundance. That hungry gap is where many gardens quietly fail. Spring salads end, summer crops aren't ready, and suddenly you're back at the store, buying vegetables you thought your garden would replace. This is where January started. Brassicas change everything. Cauliflower, when started early, matures before summer heat ruins it. People think cauliflower is difficult, but the truth is simpler. It hates interruption, cold snaps, late starts, stunted growth. All of that leads to small, disappointing heads. January planting avoids those problems by giving cauliflower a smooth, uninterrupted life. When grown properly, cauliflower fills plates in early summer when food is scarce and prices are high. It's not flashy, but it's filling. And filling food is survival food. Lettuce is another crop people misunderstand. Summer lettuce bolts fast, turns bitter, and frustrates gardeners. But winter and early spring lettuce are different. Started in January under protection, they grow slowly and gently. They don't rush. They don't panic. That slow growth creates tender leaves when your body is craving something fresh after months of stored food. You don't need huge beds. A small space produces steady salads weeks before outdoor gardens wake up. Then there's celery. Celery has a reputation for being difficult, but that reputation mostly comes from starting it too late. Celery needs time. It needs consistent moisture, and it needs rich soil. January planting gives it all three. When celery is grown well, it becomes more than a garnish. It becomes bulk food, soup base, stew filler, something you cut again and again through late summer and fall. Here's what all these crops have in common. They turn time into calories. They don't rush. They don't demand perfection. They reward preparation. And if you're watching this thinking, this sounds like work, remember this. The work happens now. When the garden is quiet, when your body isn't already exhausted by summer heat, when mistakes are small and easy to fix. Later, when food matters most, these plants are already doing the work for you. In the next part, we're going to cross a line from ordinary gardening into true resilience. We'll talk about crops that tolerate cold, improve soil, and produce when almost nothing else will. And one of them has been feeding people quietly for thousands of years. Now we move into a different category of crops. These are the ones that don't just feed you, they stabilize your entire garden system. They grow when it's cold. They don't panic in bad weather. And some of them quietly improve the soil while they feed you. Broad beans, also known as fava beans, are one of the toughest food plants humans ever domesticated. In mild climates, they can go straight into the ground in January. In colder areas, they're started under simple protection and planted out early. What makes broad beans special isn't just their cold tolerance. It's that they make their own fertilizer. Their roots host bacteria that pull nitrogen from the air and store it in the soil. That means while you're harvesting protein-rich beans, your garden bed is getting richer instead of poorer. In late spring, when most gardens are still empty, broad beans are producing real food, not garnish. Real meals. Peas belong in this same category. Sweet, tender, and deeply nostalgic, peas are one of the few foods people rarely regret planting. Started early, they climb while the weather is still cool, produce heavily, and finish before summer stress arrives. There's something important about peas that doesn't show up on seed packets. They train patience. You plant them early, you protect them gently, and then, suddenly, they're sweet enough that they barely make it back to the kitchen. Spinach is another cold season powerhouse. It doesn't care about frost the way people think. In fact, cold makes spinach sweeter. When started in January, spinach gives you dense nutrition early in the year, exactly when bodies are most depleted. This is not decorative food. Spinach is iron, minerals, and energy. It's one of the few crops that truly earns its space in a survival garden. Kale completes this group. Once established, kale borders on indestructible. It tolerates heat, cold, poor soil, and neglect better than almost any vegetable. Started early, and it pays you back for months, sometimes over a full year. These crops are not glamorous, but they are dependable, and dependability is the heart of food security. If this is already changing how you think about your garden, tap the like button. It helps this information reach people who need it. Because what we're about to cover next moves beyond annual harvests and into crops that quietly feed families for years. Now let's talk about storage. Because growing food is only half the battle. Keeping it is what separates gardeners from survivors. Garlic is one of the most powerful foods you can grow for long-term resilience. When planted early, it develops strong roots before winter fully loosens its grip. And once harvested, properly cured garlic stores for months without refrigeration. It's medicine in the kitchen, flavor in every meal, and insurance in uncertain times. One planting gives you a harvest that carries you through most of the year. Shallots do something similar, but even better in some ways. They multiply quietly underground, producing clusters from a single bulb. Their flavor is milder, and their storage life is often longer than onions. For many cultures, shallots were the preferred cooking base long before supermarkets existed. Then there's rhubarb. Rhubarb doesn't look like survival food. But when fresh fruit is scarce, rhubarb becomes a lifeline. Once established, it comes back every year without replanting. And when forced early, it produces tender stalks weeks before most gardens wake up. Rhubarb reminds us that food security isn't just calories. It's morale, it's comfort. It's something warm and familiar on the table when everything else feels thin. These crops share something important. You plant them once, and they give back repeatedly. That's the direction every resilient garden should move. In the next part, we'll step fully into perennial territory. Crops that don't just store well, but return year after year, quietly building food independence in the background. And one of them has been misunderstood, underestimated, and nearly forgotten, despite its incredible productivity. This is where gardening stops being seasonal and starts becoming permanent. Perennial food crops are the quiet backbone of true self-sufficiency. You plant them once, care for them a little in the beginning, and then they keep showing up long after annual gardens fail. Potatoes sit right on the edge between annual and perennial thinking. Technically annual, yes, but when you learn to give them a head start, they behave very differently. January is when potatoes are prepared, not planted. Seed potatoes are set out to sprout slowly in cool light. This early preparation means that when the soil is ready, the plants are already awake. They grow faster, stronger, and produce earlier. That earlier harvest matters. Early potatoes fill the gap when stored food is running low and summer crops are still weeks away. For many families historically, potatoes weren't just food, they were stability. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood crops ever grown. Jerusalem artichokes. Despite the name, they are not artichokes, and they have nothing to do with Jerusalem. They are sunflower relatives that grow tall, cheerful stalks above ground and enormous quantities of edible tubers below. Once planted, they are incredibly hard to remove. And that's not a flaw, it's a feature. In survival situations, persistence matters. These tubers store best in the ground itself, protected from frost and rot, waiting until you need them. However, this is where honesty matters. Jerusalem artichokes can be invasive. They must be planted where they can be controlled. But for people who want a crop that survives neglect, poor soil, and bad years, few plants compare. They fed people during wars. They fed people during depressions. And they are still here, quietly waiting for gardeners who understand their value. And now, we come to one of the most patient plants of all. Asparagus asks something rare from modern gardeners. Patience. When you plant asparagus, you don't harvest right away. You wait. You let it grow. You let it build strength underground. But once asparagus is established, it rewards you for decades. Year after year, as spring begins, asparagus rises from the soil without asking permission. No seed trays, no replanting, no scrambling, just food. In the past, asparagus beds were generational assets. They were planted with the future in mind. And that mindset is exactly what modern gardening lost. Asparagus doesn't care about trends. It doesn't care about grocery prices. It shows up when it's ready, and it keeps showing up. This is the secret most people miss. Food security isn't built in one season. It's built slowly, quietly, by choosing plants that outlive bad years, bad backs, and bad systems. And in the final part, I'm going to bring everything together. I'll reveal the core pattern behind all these crops, explain how to choose what fits your body and space, and give you one simple action you can take today no matter where you live. Because if you forget everything else from this video, there's one principle that matters more than all the rest. By now, you may have noticed a pattern forming. None of these crops rely on speed. None of them depend on perfect weather. And none of them require constant bending, lifting, or frantic maintenance. That's not an accident. Resilient gardens are designed for the gardener you will be in 10 or 20 years, not the one you are today. They favor long seasons, slow growth, storage ability, and forgiveness. The mistake most people make is chasing variety instead of reliability. They grow a little of everything and end up depending on stores anyway. The gardens that truly feed people are built around a core group of dependable foods, grown early, grown patiently, and grown with intention. January planting forces you to think differently. You're not reacting to the weather. You're preparing for the year ahead. You're making decisions while everyone else is waiting. And this is where the biggest secret lives. The most powerful survival crop isn't flashy. It doesn't go viral. And most gardeners walk past it without understanding what it offers. It's the idea of permanence. When you shift even part of your garden toward long living, self-returning crops, garlic that stores, kale that resprouts, asparagus that returns, tubers that wait underground, you stop racing the calendar. You stop gardening in panic mode. You build a system that quietly feeds you, whether times are easy or hard. In a moment, I'll give you the simplest way to start this mindset without changing your entire garden or your entire life. Because food security doesn't require perfection. It requires direction. If you remember nothing else from this entire video, remember this: plant for your future self. Not the version of you with endless energy and time, but the version with sore knees, limited money, and real responsibilities. The version who needs food to show up without drama. The easiest first step is this: Choose just one crop from today's list and commit to starting it in January next year or right now. If your climate allows, not 10 crops. 1. Onions if you want storage, kale if you want endurance, garlic if you want insurance, asparagus if you want to plant something that outlives fear. Food security is not built all at once. It's built decision by decision. If this video helped you think differently about your garden, tap like and subscribe. This channel is for people who want gardens that feed families, not algorithms. And tell me in the comments which crop you're going to plant first and what country you're watching from. I read every comment if you want. Next, I can do a deep video on edible weeds that survive drought, neglect, and bad soil. If that interests you, comment the word weeds below. Your garden doesn't start in spring. It starts when you decide not to. Wait.